Hello folks, welcome to the gloriously sunny South Downs. Yeah, it's a really lovely late August day today, and I thought what better day than this to talk about waterproofs. If some of you have seen some of my other videos, you might know that I'm semi-retired and now work in an outdoor gear shop. And one of the questions that's commonly asked by customers in the shop is, why is one jacket here £40 and another jacket over there £340? So I thought I'd do a little video explaining really what's what with waterproofs and why some are much more expensive than others. So yeah, welcome back to my channel. My name's John and I make videos on camping, astronomy and walking. If you like what you see in this video, then please check my channel out, as there may be others that interest you there. But in the meantime, let's crack on with today's video. So when we talk about waterproof jackets, we're really looking at two things. One is the waterproofness of that jacket, and the other is the breathability of the jacket. In addition to those two factors, we're also interested in the jacket's weight, the jacket's durability, and of course the jacket's price. And manufacturers are attempting to strike a balance of all of those factors depending on the cost of the garment and its intended use. When we talk about waterproofness, the units that are used to measure the degree of waterproofness are millimetres of water, and this actually represents a column of water put onto the jacket surface, and effectively you add to the height of that column of water by pouring water into a tube, if you like, metaphorically, and the height of water at which that jacket leaks gives you the millimetres head related to that jacket. And minimum level for waterproofness is basically 1,000 millimetres or 1,500 millimetres. That's the sort of number that designates the point at which a jacket can start to call itself a waterproof. As you go up the scale, you get say 2,000 to 5,000 millimetres of head, and this sort of number represents the figures that you might get with a jacket that's intended for occasional use in sort of on-off rain, not prolonged rain, not particularly heavy rain. When you get up to 10,000 millimetres, that's the kind of minimum level that you might consider for hill walking, but that assumes that the rain isn't overly heavy and not prolonged. When you get 20,000 millimetres and up, that's the sort of figure that represents true all-round use in, say, British mountains, in all conditions, in all seasons. Once you get to figures of, say, 30,000 millimetres and above, that relates to extreme conditions, probably ones that we don't really come across particularly often here in the UK. When we talk about breathability, we're really referring to the garment's ability to get your sweaty vapour out from inside the jacket into the outside world without it condensing too much and getting you too wet from the inside of the jacket. And the measure of this is called moisture vapour transmission rate, and it refers to the grams of vapour per square metre per day that fabric or garment is capable of passing. However, it's all got to be taken with a little bit of a pinch of salt as far as the breathability is concerned, because there are a lot of variables that affect the moisture vapour transmission rate. Things like whether the jacket's got pockets or not, whether it's got storm flaps, the outside temperature has a bearing on it. So there are so many variables that really it's difficult to rely on these kind of objective figures, if you like, and consequently often it's more of a sort of word of mouth stroke anecdotal comparison between different jackets and different fabrics. The core of all waterproof jackets is the waterproof membrane, or the waterproof breathable membrane, and this is usually made up of either Eptfe or polyurethane, and it's a very thin layer that's often laminated to the interior surface of the jacket. The front surface, or the outside surface of a jacket, is usually referred as the jacket face, or the face surface, and this is what takes all the abrasion. And this face fabric, apart from protecting the membrane, is usually coated with a durable water repellency layer that's kind of infused into the fabric or sprayed onto it. And this helps the breathability of the garment and encourages the water to bead up and roll off. It's basically a water-hating thin coating that's applied to the outside of the fabric. This durable water repellency unfortunately rubs off, particularly where the rucksack straps are on your shoulders or round the waist. So this is something that needs to be topped up every now and again as you clean your garment. And when you notice that the water no longer beads on the surface of the garment, that's the time to retreat the durable water repellency, because if the water sort of sinks in to that outside face fabric, it means that the breathable waterproof laminate underneath can no longer breathe anywhere near as effectively, and so you end up getting wet from sweat on the inside and feeling that your jacket's not waterproof anymore, apart from the fact that it will feel really cold, clammy and horrible. The waterproof membrane also needs protecting on the inside of the jacket, and this is achieved in one of two ways really. One is there's a backer layer that's affixed to the waterproof membrane to create a 3-layer laminate, and these jackets are called 3-layer jackets. The other way of doing it is not to actually affix a backer to the waterproof membrane directly, but rather to hang a loose liner. Sometimes it's just a general liner, commonly it's a mesh, and we'll have a look at one of those examples a little bit later in this video. There's a kind of halfway house between the two, which is called a 2.5-layer jacket, where a very, very thin, I think it's a carbon layer, is affixed to the waterproof membrane. So that actually is a true laminate, but this layer isn't considered a true layer, hence it's thought of as a half layer. So you've basically got 3 different types of jackets. You've got 3-layer jackets, which the material appears as a single sheet of 3 laminates basically. You've got a 2-layer jacket where the waterproof membrane is affixed to the face fabric and a loose mesh liner hangs on the inside of that, and you've got 2.5-layer jackets where it's a single laminate structure, but the 3rd layer is really only a half layer. So now looking in more detail at the membranes, we'll have a look at the first type of membrane, which is called Eptfe, and this was originally developed by the Gore company in the late 70s. So it's had a good 40-something years of development. And what, I think his name was what William Gore discovered was, if you stretch out PTFE, you get a load of tiny little pores or holes appear in the PTFE layer. And this is the crux of the Gore-Tex fabric basically. It's a sheet of Eptfe where it's got something like 9 billion pores per square inch within that membrane. So what you end up with this membrane is a sort of porous web, for want of a better word. Now these holes, the sort of 9 billion per square inch, are so small that a liquid water molecule when it tries to get through one of these holes, it simply can't. The surface tension of the water plus the sheer size of the molecule means that it can't get through, and this is what gives the material its waterproofness. Water vapour molecules, however, are smaller than the pores that are in the membrane, so these are able to pass quite freely through the holes. So in this way the jacket can prevent water from coming in and allow water vapour to leave. And this was basically the fundamentals of Gore's discovery in the late 70s. The PTFE membrane itself is coated with a microscopically thin polyurethane layer, and polyurethane is a water-loving material. So the idea is that this is attracting the water molecules from inside the jacket and dragging it through the membrane and through the outer fabric and out into the outside world. Now, all jackets achieve their breathability through a couple of fundamental principles, basically. One is that heat always flows from hot to cold, and so if the inside of your jacket is hotter than the outside world, the heat wants to get out and it can help take the water vapour with it. And equally, the molecular concentration of vapour in the jacket, if that is higher than the molecular concentration in the outside world, again, there's a law of physics that basically says that the concentration wants to even itself out. So the molecules inside the jacket are trying to get to the outside world. It's a bit like pressure, if you like. Pressure always goes from high to low, and that's the idea here. So there's a couple of laws of physics that are used to make breathable garments work. And William Gore developed Gore-Tex fabric, and there's a host of different fabrics nowadays: Gore-Tex Pro, Gore-Tex Active, Gore-Tex Packlight, and they've all got slightly different characteristics. We'll have a look at some of them in this video. And Gore-Tex jackets come in 3 different forms. You get 2-layer, 2.5 layer and 3-layer jackets, and I've got examples of each with me today that we can have a little look at. This jacket that I'm wearing here is a 2-layer Gore-Tex jacket. Typically this sort of jacket would cost around and about £150, although you get them in the sale sometimes for sort of 120, 130. It's fairly heavy compared to my other jackets, but that's because of the liner. But we'll have a little look at that liner now. So this is the 2-layer jacket. It's a North Face jacket. I was lucky enough to buy it second hand for £50 because a colleague of mine bought it and realised it was too small, so I got a little bit of a bargain there. And here, hopefully you can see the mesh liner. There it is there. It's a loose mesh, and the white stuff that you can see underneath is the actual Gore-Tex layer itself. 2-layer jackets like this one are probably the most common jackets on the market, and they span all price points really, from sort of 40 quid up to about 150 or more. They're intended for not quite so arduous environments as, say, 3-layer jackets, so their manufacturing techniques aren't quite as refined. They're also slightly heavier than 3-layer jackets, but because of the lining they're quite comfortable to wear. They're less durable than 3-layer jackets. The membrane underneath the mesh will eventually fragment and wear away, and I've had that with one of my jackets. But overall, this sort of jacket is a good kind of workhorse jacket, suitable for most conditions. So staying with ePTFE membranes then, and Gore-Tex, this is a 2.5-layer Gore-Tex jacket. I've only just recently bought it, so I need the weather to turn and it to get a bit autumnal, and then I'll be able to do a little bit of a review of it. But yeah, this is a 2.5-layer Gore-Tex Packlight jacket. This jacket's the Mountain Equipment Garwall jacket. As I say, it's made from Gore-Tex Packlight, and it's between 170 and 190 pounds at the moment, I notice. And you can see the inner surface of the jacket here isn't a mesh liner or anything like that. There's this very, very thin carbony type coating protecting the Eptfe Gore-Tex membrane underneath. Now, as the name suggests, this sort of jacket is very, very light. It's about probably half the weight at worst of the 2-layer jacket that I just showed you, and probably 2/3 of the weight of the 3-layer jacket that I've got. But of course, as with everything, there's a downside, and that's that this isn't as durable as, say, a 3-layer jacket would be. But the idea of this jacket really is it's intended for less extreme use, and the argument for them really is your waterproof jacket probably spends 90% of its time in your pack, so why bother carrying more weight than is necessary? So I shall be using this jacket quite a lot, certainly in the southeast of England. If I go up to the Lake District, say in the winter, then I would be using a 3-layer jacket. And this is my 3-layer Gore-Tex jacket. It's a very old, something like 12, 13-year-old mountain equipment ogre jacket. And for years, this was the kind of benchmark British hill walking jacket. It then ceased production. I noticed the ogre model's being brought back again, but not using Gore-Tex, using Mountain Equipment's own brand, Polyurethane. This jacket uses Gore-Tex Pro fabric, and it's quite a feature-packed jacket, basically. It's got lots of pockets and storm flaps, and it's intended for quite severe weather conditions. And here's the inside of the 3-layer jacket, and this backer layer protecting the Gore-Tex is much thicker than on the 2.5-layer jacket. So Gore-Tex Pro jackets like this one sort of represent the higher end of the Gore-Tex tree. I think you can't buy this jacket now, but similar jackets are going to be around the £300 mark. Gore-Tex Pro is generally considered the best in their range, matching a mixture of durability, breathability, waterproofness and weight. And I can certainly attest to the durability of this jacket because, as I say, it's more than a decade old and I have looked after it properly. Gore-Tex themselves have last year in 2020 taken the Pro material and created a few subgroups within it, making lighter versions, more breathable versions, that sort of thing. And you'll see perhaps why they may have done that shortly in this video. Now we're going to stay with Eptfe membranes, but move away from Gore-Tex. You may remember earlier that I said that Gore-Tex apply a microscopically thin polyurethane layer to their Gore-Tex membrane. There's an alternative technology with Eptfe where you infuse the membrane with an oil-hating substance, and the idea is that instead of covering the pores in the membrane up, you leave them open, and this, as you can imagine, generates a highly breathable garment. And this is the technology used by Event, and they've got a few subdivisions within their technology itself, but it's known for producing highly breathable garments. The downside of Event is because the pores are basically open, they're prone to getting clogged and filled up with oil and dirt and that sort of thing. So you need to take a lot of care with these garments, and their long-term robustness possibly isn't up to that of Gore-Tex. But that's a quite well-established technology now. They were trying to knock Gore-Tex off their top of the tree perch, if you like, but I don't think they managed it. Okay, so we've had a look at Eptfe membranes. Now it's time to look at probably the most common membrane across the whole spectrum of waterproof jackets, and that's a polyurethane membrane. And this is attempting to do the same thing in terms of being waterproof and breathable. The main difference between polyurethane membranes and Eptfe membranes is polyurethane membranes haven't got any pores in to allow the moisture to pass through. They are very thin and moisture can pass through it, but typically they're thicker than the Eptfe membrane used in, say, Gore-Tex. The manufacture of jackets with polyurethane membranes, with a couple of exceptions that we'll come on to later, is basically cheaper than, say, the Gore-Tex standards or the event standards. Most common jacket structure is a 2-layer jacket, which looks very similar to the 2-layer Gore-Tex versions. This is a 9 to 10-year-old North Face polyurethane jacket. Most of the manufacturers come up with their own names for the waterproof technology that they use. At the time, North Face were calling theirs High Vent. I think they've changed it now. Berghaus do a similar thing. They call theirs Hydra Shell. They all come up with different names to differentiate between their membrane and everybody else's. The structure of this jacket is a 2-layer jacket. As you can see, there's the mesh, and you can hopefully see the white membrane underneath that. So these polyurethane jackets then sit typically in price between about £30 to £40 for, say, a Peter Storm jacket, up to around the £100 mark for, say, the North Face jacket that I showed you, or the Berghaus equivalent. So they're quite cost-effective jackets. The membrane itself hasn't got holes in it, it's not porous. It's thin enough to allow moisture and vapours to get dragged through, but typically they're not as breathable as, say, a Gore-Tex or an event jacket, and they really rely on there being quite a temperature differential between the inside of the jacket and the outside world. In terms of waterproofness, Peter Storm jacket, typically 5,000 millimetres of head, which would make it good for dog walking and occasional use, provided you weren't expecting persistent and heavy rain. The higher end, around the £100 mark, the waterproofness will be between sort of 10,000 and 15,000 millimetres, which is a good kind of introductory level if you're just kind of dabbling with hill walking and things, and don't expect to get caught in absolutely horrendous weather. So these are very common jackets, and although they're not up to the performance standards of, say, Gore-Tex, they still make reasonable jackets for those that are dabbling with the outdoors. There have been some recent developments with polyurethane jackets, though, from companies looking to knock Gore-Tex off the top of the tree, and one of these companies is North Face, and they've developed their own membrane and technology that they call Futurelight. And this technology essentially means they build almost a mesh or a web of material by applying thousands of tiny fibres. They kind of squirt them out of nozzles, and it creates this mesh with lots of holes in it. And the idea of this is that it's very waterproof and very breathable. The technology is still quite new. It was only introduced in 2019, I think. It's found its way into some of their jackets and a lot of their shoes at this point. The general perception of these jackets is that they are more breathable than, say, the Gore-Tex Pro, typical Gore-Tex Pro jacket like mine. And I think this might be the reason why Gore-Tex have subdivided the Pro sort of section up into very breathable jackets, jackets for active use, jackets like mine for more severe conditions, in order to kind of combat the Futurelight effect, if you like. The Futurelight fabrics feel very soft, they're also quite stretchy, so they're very comfortable to wear. Whereas my Gore-Tex Pro jacket, the traditional one, it would feel quite stiff in comparison. Question marks over Futurelight at the moment are its durability. The general feeling is it's not going to be as durable as say a Gore-Tex Pro jacket, but at the end of the day it's kind of horses for courses. For those people who are doing trail running, for example, not expecting to carry heavy packs, then Futurelight as of now appears to be a good way to go. The cost of these jackets starts at about £200 and goes up to sort of £400, and I think there are subdivisions within the Futurelight category as well. Common perceptions at the moment are, if you're carrying a heavy pack expecting to be in rugged conditions, or the jacket might suffer from abrasion, then at the minute the Futurelight material hasn't been around long enough to attest for its durability. So that's a kind of development that's ongoing at the moment, and it will be interesting to see if Futurelight actually does manage to knock Gore-Tex off its perch. At the moment I've got my doubts. I think Futurelight has a specific and valuable role to play within the outdoor market, but to knock something like Gore-Tex off its perch, it's got quite a game on its hands. But we shall see, and it will be interesting to see what the next 5 years brings in terms of durability. And there are another few technologies that are kind of hot on the heels of Futurelight as well. The final technology that I want to mention today is used by the outdoor manufacturer Paramo, and they use a nick-wax analogy basically, and this is a completely different setup whereby the outer face of the jacket is covered with a DWR coating for water repellency, and on the inner of the jacket is almost like a moisture pump. It's a material that will draw through vapour and moisture through capillary action, and quite a lot of users absolutely swear by this technology. It produces allegedly very breathable jackets, albeit at the expense of bulk and weight. So there we are. To those of you who've made it to this point in the video, I hope I've not absolutely confused you. You can see there are a number of different technologies around at different price points, and the trick really is to figure out what you want to use the jacket for. If you only want to go walking the dog for an hour or so, and you might get caught out in light to moderate rain, then you probably only need to spend £30–40 on a jacket. If you want to start dipping your toe into slightly more adventurous walking, then probably £100 or so would do you proud. If you know that you're going to be spending lots of times walking in the fells or the mountains of Scotland, then it's worth investing in a Gore-Tex jacket. If you want a jacket that will last a very long time, then look at something like a 3-layer Gore-Tex jacket. As I say, mine's lasted more than a decade with care. But it's expensive. If you're interested in trying out the new technologies, then some of the Futurelight stuff's worth looking at for very lightweight, very breathable gear. Some of the subdivisions within the Gore-Tex Pro range now are designed specifically for people like trail runners. So there's a whole host of options, and it all really depends on what you want to do with your jacket. So probably the best thing for people to do is to have a think about that, and then go into your local shop and ask the knowledgeable assistant there about what sort of jacket best suits your needs within your budget. But I hope you found this interesting and not confusing, and yeah, on this lovely sunny day it's been a bit hard wearing waterproof jackets, but yeah, I wish you farewell, and I shall see you next time. Cheerio.